Oh, you again. All right, come on in. Welcome to today's episode. So as great as it was to get the kit installed and be able to drive the car around again, I was way off my power target. While there are some owners out there running 12 pounds of boost on their stock bottom end VQ35s, it's generally accepted not to go over 10 pounds to avoid bending a rod. The rule of thumb is don't go over 400 wheel horsepower or 400 foot-pounds, and generally you'll be fine, although the torque figure is really the important one of the two. You can play around the edges with E85 and ignition timing, and you can get a little bit more power out of it, but you are edging closer to a catastrophic failure. So this HKS kit has the option for two pulley sizes. That's the 110mm and 100mm. You could say that the 110mm is for a stock bottom end and the 100mm is more for a built bottom end, as it's capable of pushing up to 15 psi. Now, I've mentioned a few times I purchased this kit with the intention of building a forged engine eventually. So after finding out the kit also comes with a restrictor plate, I figured I could use that in combination with the 100mm pulley so that I didn't have to buy both. Then I could just remove the plate once the engine's built. HKS told me that the 100mm with the restrictor would make about 5 to 8 psi, and you can see from my last video that I was bang in the middle at about 6.5 psi. If I'd hit 8 psi, I might have been okay with the output and left it alone, but at 330 wheel horsepower, it just left too much power on the table for me. So obviously the only sensible option for me was to open up the restrictor to make more boost. All right, so as previously mentioned, I'm not happy with the output of the boost. Using the 100mm pulley with the restrictor, I can only hit just over 6 psi of boost. So the correct thing to do in the first place would have been just to use the 100mm pulley without a restrictor, but I'm not going to go and buy the other pulley now because yeah, look, if I had to do it all again, absolutely go with 110mm pulley. That's going to be the right one for you if you're on a stock bottom end. You know, once it's a built bottom end and can take a bunch more boost, you know, then you go unrestricted. So I kind of did the poor man buying once type thing, expecting that I'd be able to work around it, and I can, but this is a workaround, and of course I've got to pay for a second round of tuning to adjust now for increased boost. Anyway, so the plan is to go from the stock size in the restrictor, which is 48mm, I've already measured that, to 58mm. So I'm opening it up 10mm. I mentioned earlier, I kind of did the maths, and if the assumption is that it's basically a linear increase as this opens up with the amount of boost it can make, and, you know, disclaimer, it's probably not. There is probably some amount of curve to it, but whatever, I'm going to take the risk. So I'm going to open it up by 10mm to roughly 58 mils. And to do that, what I did was just to get the old
compass
out. Yeah, what I did then was just to do some basic measurements. So, you know, look, if you've got the tools at home, to be able to do fabrication, you're probably going to do this in a more optimal way. But for those sort of at home that have to do with what they've got, yeah, I just did the old measure it out. So I had 48 mils as the inner circle, and then I just went to 58 mils, what would be 58 mils in diameter for this circle here. I lined this up, you know, I spent a bit more time more accurately doing it, and then held it down and just used this to do the trace on where that 58mm would lie. And just for reference sake, I've actually gone and done the full 75mm, which would be the unrestricted size. So you can see there's still, when we're talking 58mm to 75mm, so there's still 17mm additional diameter to open it up to, but I'm going to leave that alone. So look, I'm hoping I just make roughly around the 10 psi boost. So now the thing is with this, actually opening this up, I did go down to just a local exhaust shop just to ask if they could, you know, help me out and use a bench drill to open that up. They weren't particularly helpful, that's fine. You know, they had a bunch of excuses why not. They were even talking using a plasma cutter. I think it's really unnecessary. Anyway, whatever, I'm not a fabricator, what do I know? I didn't want to labour the point, so I just said that's fine. His other suggestion was to use a die grinder, which I have. yeah, so I'm going to use the die grinder. Alright, I think that turned out pretty well for a home job on the die grinder. So now it's a case of filing it out and sanding it a bit. It doesn't need to be pretty, I mean, but you know, I'm going to clean it up because I want it to look nice anyway.
Great success!
This is a better look at the intake air temperature sensor. That was installed by a local fabricator. Here's what it looks like when you make a mistake and then have to have them fix it. So that was, you know, it's not particularly expensive, but like, you know, it's money you didn't have to spend. Anyway, so that's in the right position there. Doesn't get in the way. Look, it could still go back a fraction further. The coupler doesn't sit on it when it's installed, but it's damn close. So you could definitely justify going back a bit further. This is another look at my math blank that I 3D printed. Doing a good job. Anywho, without further ado, we'll get this back on. This is literally going to be the first start from after opening up the restrictor. So I'm not that I'm going to be able to tell from here because I'm not going to try and hit maximum boost or anything like that. This is literally just how is it going to run now that it's able to consume more air across the entire rev range. So I'm expecting the idle's probably going to be, I'm assuming, about the same from where it was. And then I'm just going to have to play around with the VE table because it'll be running lean. So there's obviously going to be more air in the mixture on the whole table. So across the rev range and the load. So I'm just going to play around with that. But the idea is just to get it into a state of tune again that I can drive it to the tuners and they can do the rest. Anyway, here goes nothing. actually pretty easy. It was easier than usual. I just cranked it for probably another second or so longer than I normally crank it, just out of curiosity. And crank it. And here we are. Probably won't come as any surprise that this was actually my very first time at the drag strip. I went in hoping for somewhere in the 12s, as I figured that that's what the car should have been capable of. Besides the power increase, I've also got a 3.9 final drive with a Quaife limited slip and 285 rear tyres, although they're only 19 engine on some pretty cheap Kumo extras. Once the engine's built and running at that much higher boost, I might consider actually going back to the stock 3.6 final drive, as the first gear, even with this level of power, is pretty short. My current final drive is great for NA, but once you start putting some serious power behind it, I think you're better off going for a higher gear option. I was frustratingly close to the 12s, but it was clearly on me, not the car. On my next two runs, I just spun the wheels on the launch, so the times went back up. I'm happy knowing that there's a mid-12 in there somewhere with a solid launch and good shifts. And it was a lot of fun on the day, so you can bet I'll be back there at some point, before I even do the build. So of course then I just stuck around a little longer to watch some of the great cars on show there at Calder. For anyone that's familiar with Australian drag racing, it means that there's ton of Commodores, a lot of Turbo Falcons, and then a mixture of a few other bits and pieces. But plenty of 10s and 11s being run on the day.